The wind sliced through the benches like it had a knife, as rain battered the roof of the former Amtrak station in upstate New York. Resentment, while shielding Sophie with one arm, one is carrying a paper bag filled with peanut butter sandwiches that Evan had made at 5 in the morning, while the other is shielding his 5-year-old daughter from the wind gusts. Evan stood outside the breakfast and likely lunch waiting area. He checked his watch and saw that there was another delay. Sophie pulled on his jacket and the woman fell. Evan turned to see a dark-clad woman on the platform's far end, clutching her stomach with one hand and attempting to retrieve the contents of a bag that had been spilled with the other. No one moved. Some shifted uneasily, but nobody offered assistance without hesitation. After giving Sophie the purse, Evan said, "Stay right here." He hurried over and kneeled next to the woman whose face was pale and whose breathing was shallow. She moaned as she looked up at him, and he gently said, "I've got you." He helped her sit against a pillar and checked her over, perhaps out of instinct or perhaps desperation, taught him that she couldn't have been more than 7 months away, and the crowd continued to keep their distance, eyes darting toward their phones and updating the sky everywhere. But here, Evan removed his coat and wrapped it around her, asking, "Do you want me to call someone an ambulance?" She said, "No." Too quickly, her voice tight. "Just help me breathe. It's not the baby. I think I was just in a panic." The woman's lips quivered as Sophie patted him over and held out a half sandwich. "Thank you, sweetie," he replied, lowering his voice. "And that's my boss." The woman smiled slightly. Emma. He stated she wasn't accustomed to being polite or didn't trust it, so he just stayed with her until the train came. He helped her board, disregarding the uncomfortable steps, and then he said, "Where are you headed?" which even startled him. "Greystone," she replied, "but I don't know why." Evan rubbed his neck and remarked, "Funny, that's our stop." When the train arrived in the small town, Evan had told Sophie, who was sleeping soundly on Emma's lap, about losing his wife 3 years prior, working odd jobs and raising a daughter on duct tape and goodwill. Emma had mostly listened to her answers, which were vague. She had mentioned that she was a widow and that she was going to see a lawyer recently. She thanked him and gave him a business card as they got off the train. It was just a name and a number, but the paper looked thick and expensive. "If you ever need anything, please call me." Evan dismissed it, saying that just because we all need something doesn't mean we can never supply it. Nevertheless, he accepted it. 3 weeks later, Evan received a call from a number he didn't recognize. The woman asked him to attend a meeting at the county office about a land dispute, and he was on the verge of canceling. When he got there, he discovered Emma seated at the head of the table and seemed unsure of the questions, so he assumed it was an error. Her hair was pulled back, her coat sharper, the ring she wasn't wearing before. Now clearly visible, a family heirloom, they said later, worth more than his house. She stood when she saw him. "Evan, I must tell you the truth. Turns out Emma wasn't just a widow. She was the Emma Caldwells to the Caldwell family estates that stretched across the county, and then some she vanished after the tabloids devoured every detail of her husband's death in a car accident, quietly moved to a remote cottage, under a different name, let the lawyers handle everything. She didn't want to be the rich widow, she desired solitude and silence. But something about that day at the train station changed her. Maybe it was the way Evan didn't ask who she was or how. Sophie offered her half a sandwich without hesitation, or maybe it was how no one else helped but one man with nothing to give, but his coat still showed up. "I've been selling off pieces of land. I don't want," she explained to him, "but I kept one tract. The one near Greystone Elementary there, I'm building something housing for single parents, also child care." "Yes, you reminded me of who I wanted to be, not who the paper said I was," she said, adding that Evan blinked "do me" because of people, like you. 6 months later, Sophie's laughter reverberated off the new playground behind their apartment, which was one of the new units Emma's foundation funded now that he managed the community center. People said that the world was cold, selfish, and uncaring, But that day on the platform, someone stopped in the rain. Not because he expected anything in return, but because it was right. And that act of kindness, done quietly when no one was looking, changed everything. Evan had a steady job, and Emma came over occasionally, not as a billionaire or even as a benefactor, just as Emma brought hot cocoa and inquired about Sophie's drawing abilities. Sometimes the smallest gesture is the beginning of someone's second chance. On Sundays, Evan would frequently find himself looking out at the field where the old rail line had been cleared for a community garden. It wasn't much, just a few raised beds, gravel paths, and a wooden bench under a maple tree. But it meant something. It meant that people had restored their faith in one another. Emma spent most weekends there, not wearing designer clothes or being escorted by bodyguards, but rather wearing worn jeans and a flannel shirt, her hair in a braid, and she was digging in the ground like everyone else. Sophia had taken to calling her Miss M, as if she were some cherished aunt who had simply appeared in their lives and chosen to stay. The name made Emma smile in that quiet, distant way that people do when they're suppressing a deeper emotion. They never spoke much about that day at the train station, not really. It was a shared memory that was too fragile to be examined directly. One evening, after a lengthy community meeting about expanding the daycare facilities, they lingered outside the center under the amber glow of the porch light. Emma leaned on the railing, sipping from a chipped mug that someone had forgotten years ago. "Have you ever considered how random everything is?" she asked, not looking at him constantly. Evan occasionally wondered if she would tell others about it, if she ever mentioned the man with the peanut butter sandwich and the little girl who offered it like it was treasure. The night was cool and peaceful from within, and the muffled sound of Sophie's laughter spilled out, mingling with someone strumming a guitar. Evan said, "One wrong train, one delay, one decision not to stop. I nearly didn't board the train. That day," she said, "but something told me I needed to feel like a normal person. I thought I was running away, but I was speeding towards something." Evan nodded, letting the silence stretch. "Do you ever regret giving up?" he asked. "Well, everything," he asked. Careful with the words, Emma didn't answer right away, then she smiled the off and tired. "I didn't give it up. I just changed what everything meant. There was something unspoken in the air, something they both felt but never named. And maybe that was enough. Maybe what they had, this odd, beautiful friendship born from a moment of compassion, was the real wealth in their lives. The next year, the center got funding for 2 more buildings. A job training program started up, followed by a scholarship fund in Emma's late husband's name. People came not because of the money or the name, but because word spread. This was a place where dignity lived, where help came with no strings, where kindness wasn't just a slogan on a brochure, and somewhere in that quiet corner of the world, a single dad and a once lost widow kept showing up for each other, for the neighborhood, for those who hadn't yet found their way out of the storm. Not every story needs a fairy tale ending. Some just need someone to stop in the rain,